Hey guys, welcome back to the Driver's Lounge. My name is Eric Johnson Jr., and for those who haven't listened to this podcast before or seen our profiles on any of our social media, however it is you're watching this, I'm a 21-year-old race car driver from Washington State, and I just try to do all things racing. Most notably right now, if you've followed our stuff along closely, you probably know that I race full-time in the NASCAR ARCA West Series, which is what we're probably most notably seen for right now. But we try to do everything we can in the racing world. So if you want to see more content like that, make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button, whatever you can on the platform you're watching, because I think it's pretty important. If you want to get to know us, to follow along on our content, and if you're able to, we'd highly recommend it. But you don't have to by any means. We just appreciate all the support we can get. But kind of picking up right. Oh man. Got to end this. Camera died. Finally back here. Got the camera situated. Sorry about that. For anyone watching, you're probably thinking, man, this kid does not know how to record a podcast with all the issues I'm having with cameras dying and dogs barking, but whatever. Part of the learning process, right? So appreciate you guys pulling through it for me. But most importantly, welcome back to the podcast. Like I said, before the camera cut out. But my plan here in this episode, I really just wanted to talk about our 2024 season that we have going on and coming up, and all of our plans for that, as well as our race at Phoenix, which was, now sitting here as I'm recording this, it is March 22nd, and we've wrapped up Phoenix earlier this month and are going into Irwindale here next weekend, or I guess the weekend after the next, on the 30th or whatever weekend that is there. Just super pumped and had a really great time at Phoenix. Obviously, I want to go over that. There's a lot of cool stories I think that you guys are probably going to enjoy if you do listen to this. And who knows, maybe I'm talking to myself and it's just a good place to go back and remember those. But either way, that's the whole concept of this podcast, is giving myself that space to go to and elaborate on all these. So that's what we're going to do. So sit back, enjoy, and let's get into it. So most importantly, this season being a full-time ARCA season for myself, everything we did up to this point was the lead to this. And I think it's important to say that, we never went through anything that we've done up to now with the expectation we would get here. There is no clear path to this level in the sport. And I've made that very clear, I think, in my last few episodes, that you just kind of have to figure it out and go out there and do it. And that's what we did. And while we always dreamed of being here, we never thought this was where we were going to get. But, one thing led to the next, things snowballed. And I think if you're passionate about anything enough, you can make it happen no matter where you come from. And hopefully we're a good example of that. But at the end of the day, I try to share my story. And if anyone out there can learn anything from it or enjoy listening to it, whatever it may be, I just hope people take this for their own personal reason and turn it into something good for themselves, whether it's just a good time listening or if they can apply it to what they're doing. But yeah, I never thought we'd get to where we are, but here we are. And when we went to go put this deal together, I think I really went into this in our last episode talking about how Bill was so generous that first season that we did, where we did 4 races out of the 12 to get our feet wet. That was based around the fact that we did not have funding, not the way that we needed to if we wanted to go full time. And for people looking at us from what they see now, they're probably thinking, well, what the heck? Because that's what you got going on now, right? And I want to make it clear, we're still not one of those fully funded teams. Even if it looks like that from the outside and we brand it that way, that we're doing the same as everyone else, we're still not there, and we're still actively pushing to find the funding that we need to make that happen comfortably. And my parents really are the ones that I owe the most credit to making this possible, because without them and the risks they've taken on me financially and emotionally and just in all ways possible a parent could, they've done everything they can to get me to where I am. And I owe them everything for that. So anyone ever sees my parents at the racetrack, make sure you go up, say hi, tell them that you heard about them on the podcast, and appreciate what they've done, because we would not be here without them. And so we started talking to Bill about the possibilities of running this year, and we didn't even know if we'd just do like what we did last year again, where we just run 4 races or whatever it may be. But it got to the point where at the end of the season, when we were in there preparing the car for Roseville, and I say we, I mean Chuck and I, my crew chief at the time and still is, but we were working on getting the car ready for Roseville, and could see Bill periodically in the shop, walking around and having conversations with the GM, John. And John, for those that don't know, Camarelli, I think is how you pronounce his last name. I call him Calamari, John Calamari. But who, technically on paper, I think it's Camarelli or something around that. So sorry, John, if I butchered your name. But John is the GM down at BMR, has been working at BMR since like 2013, I believe, and has done everything from crew to crew chief to car chief to GM in the shop to working on organizing trip details and being, assisting in sponsorship things at the track. John's kind of their do-it-all guy and does a great job at it. So hats off to John. Good job, John. But we could see Bill having a lot of conversations down there when we were working with John about their season coming up, because it was really important for him to kind of get his feedback and plan accordingly. And as we were down there, we kind of got the notions that Bill was struggling to fill a second seat. And I don't want to say struggling in the way that like he was doing something wrong. It was just, at the time, the way things worked out, the driver that they had the season before was going elsewhere, and they hadn't really filled a seat. Alongside everything, Bill's got this truck team going now where they went from 2 trucks to, we knew about it, but they were going to go up to a 4-car expansion, which nobody knew about at the time. But, the fact that they were going to do that was such a big deal to Bill and took a lot of his time, obviously. And so the West stuff just kind of trickled through to kind of, I don't want to say last minute, but he had so much to do before then. By the time he got to the West Series stuff, a lot of people had already just locked in their plans for the year. And we were obviously down there working on our car, like I mentioned, and hearing this. And so it kind of perked our ears up, and I fed this information back to who I thought it was useful, because I'm thinking, okay, maybe this is an opportunity. And so I started telling my dad about it, my mom, and we had the discussions if it was even plausible to consider running a season again for Bill, because especially last year, we really spread ourselves thin, and a lot of that money came out of our own pockets, and there was no way we were going to be able to do that again. I mean, and that's where I say we're not where all these other people are, where it's just a matter of figuring out where you're going to be and not how you're going to be there. We just hadn't figured out the how part on money, but we knew where we wanted to be. So a little backwards from most people, I think. And, we started talking to Bill and just basically said, hey, Bill, we've kind of got the idea that maybe you have a spot open next season. So we would really look forward, or really would be interested into, in talking to you about working with you again, like Junior did last season, and give Junior a chance to get out there again and learn. And Bill came back surprisingly saying, you know what? We would love to work with Eric again. Let's talk about what it would look like for a season. And we, but he said pretty cautiously, because he said that cautiously because he knew that our funding was limited. And he said, look, I can't do what I did for you last year, so you're going to have to find more money somehow. He was honest, and I appreciate that, because that's what we needed in the time that we had. We just had to get to work right away. And Bill told us, he said, this is going to be more expensive than probably anything you've done. So I pretty much told Bill, I said, hey, don't count us out. I remember telling Bill in his shop, I said, I don't have the money, and my parents don't have the money, but I can go out there and make it happen. I told Bill, I kind of went out on a limb and made a promise that maybe I probably wasn't going to be able to, at the time, didn't know if I could uphold. But I said, if you just give us the number, I'll find a way to get the money. But we just don't just count us out. Just give us the contract where we can at least see it and see what we need to do. And we'll see what we can make happen on our end. So he had his people send it our way, and we got an idea of what it looked like if we wanted to run a full season. Say somebody just showing up with a check and saying, "Hey, Bill, I want to drive your cars." He still had that motivation to kind of push things our way if he could that he did the year before, I think. And still, he was so busy with the truck stuff, he couldn't be as lenient as he was the year prior. But the intent was still there, and I could still tell that he was trying to help us. So we went home, and I mean, we had to pull every string you can imagine. I mean, some we felt like we were almost overstepping with business partners, and to the point where we had to just sit down and basically put our hearts on the line and just say, look, guys, we appreciate everything you've done to this point. Up till now, we had Valleyscapes on the car. Pacific Office Automation was on the late model for a couple races. Chuck, we've always put Chuck's Automotive Shop on the car just as like a thank you for what he's done. And a few other people as well. But we pretty much had to go to every single person and say, we need everything you can possibly stretch this season. And we know it's a lot to ask for, and we understand you're taking a big risk, but we worked so hard with our partners to try to find a way to give back to them, whether it's through business or funneling advertisement their way or somehow making this a beneficial thing for them. But there comes to a point where you almost feel guilty for asking somebody for so much money, because it's almost hard to make somebody think like, without seeing the money that's going to return to them right in front of them, even though it's a completely, like, you can plan out everything perfectly, you never know for sure if you're going to see that money again, especially when it's that big. And so for somebody to give us money, it took a really well executed plan. And I think it's important to talk about how much time we spent this off season before the 2024 season devoting ourselves to upgrading and perfecting our marketing decks, because there is nothing more important than that first impression when you walk in with a partner. And anyone listening to this who's trying to learn about what to do to get into racing, I think that's so important to put something together where you're not just that person walking in asking for something from them. You need to present yourself in a way that you are giving them something and in return asking for part of it back. And that's always the mindset I've tried to treat it with. So we went into our partners, and specifically Pacific Office Automation, sat down with their CEO, Doug, and or at least that's what I'm aware his position is, and had a really long heart-to-heart conversation and just put it all out there, showed him photos of them on the car in the past because he wasn't really aware how much they had helped us before. And we had done certain things that maybe some people would argue is probably the dumbest thing you could do as a NASCAR, I would say, as somebody in motorsports trying to make it. Everyone sees real estate on the cars as something that's very valuable and that you shouldn't put somebody on there unless they're paying you. Well, we took the opposite approach. And, maybe this is giving too much of my secrets out there, but honestly, if you're one of the 30 people that listen to this, you probably deserve it. So, take that for what it is. But we, in 2023, running those 4 races, put probably half the sponsors on that car that were on that car without receiving a single dollar from them and without having a single dollar contracted in from them. They were partners that we had worked with in the past, and we acknowledged it in a way that, like, it was a way of us thanking them. But in our heads, it was a strategy to build a portfolio for them so that when we came back and had the conversation, we didn't have to pull on their imagination. We could literally lay out photos in front of them and say, this is what it looks like when you're a partner of ours, and the way we're going to treat you, and the way you're going to look, out there on the track and on the haulers. And that was another thing, was we didn't even have a hauler in 2023 to really market. And now we have this hauler that comes with the full-time gig that was in that contract. And we were able to really push this marketing deck that we had never had before. And I saw the benefits of it so quickly. And that's why I try to push on anyone that has the resources to do that, to sit down and take the time to put something proper together like that. Because I think if you just walk in without a plan, you are basically rolling a dice with 100 sides and trying to land on the one correct side that's a yes. And the chances of you walking out of there with money is so slim. You have to find the most perfect person in the world that just has all the money and has no clue what to do with it to find somebody that'll just give you money. Most cases, 9 times out of 10, I'd say 90 times out of 100, you're never going to find somebody that you ask for money without reason to give you money back, you know? And so we spent so much time putting it together, but Pacific Office Automation, I can't speak well enough about Doug and the people there that have helped us. Garrett, our branch manager, that's helped us kind of organize this whole deal. I didn't even ask him permission to talk about him in this way, but I think it's important to put a name behind those companies and really elaborate on the fact that they took a chance to help a kid solely based off of what they heard and how hard he worked for this and how bad he wanted it. And yes, we found ways to push money back their way through our business and through our marketing and all that, but still, like I said, there's a risk there, and nobody can take that jump without a little bit of risk, and they did it. And for a company as big as Pacific Office Automation, for anyone that doesn't know, they sponsor the Trailblazers, the Seahawks, multiple NBA teams, and I think even like some NHL teams and things of that sort. They have an outreach much larger than a lot of companies in sports in general. And for them to come to us, this little, this pretty much this little crew of guys and say, you know what, you're somebody we believe in, that is something I will never forget. And so for as long as I'm racing and probably breathing, Pacific Office is someone that I will always speak well about and push for people to go take the time to check out, because even though they just sound like an office equipment, business, there is real kind-hearted people behind that company that want to see good in the world. And that is simply, I believe, the reason that they took a chance on me. But it is because of them and people like Valleyscapes and our other partners that are on the cars, Product 41, Chuck Jones Automotive, Kindness 911, Paul Davis Restoration, people like those companies. Someone like me could never do what I'm doing if it wasn't for them. And so if you're listening to this and you have our best interests in mind, please, if you ever get the chance to take a time to reach out and DM those companies, thank them for helping us. Anything you can do to make them feel like their time towards us and their efforts towards us are worth it would mean the world to us, because it is really solely them that makes this possible, and we just try to do what we can with the opportunity they give us. But Pacific Office Automation signed on, and it is because of them that we were able to go back to Bill and said, Bill, we're confident enough in what we've found that let's sign this contract. And I think we caught Bill off guard. I mean, really, Bill came back and his response was almost like, man, I did not see that coming. So give me a little bit to see what we can do on our end to make sure we can make this happen. Because it wasn't like, hey, Bill, we're ready to sign this contract. Sit down, sign it, done. It was more like, hey, Bill, we're ready to sign this contract. And he was like, whoa. Let me see if we can even make this work on our end as far as finding the personnel and making sure everything works. Because Bill could have just signed that contract and, like a businessman, taken the money and given us just what he could. But because of the kind of person Bill is, he wanted to make sure we had all the right people in order to make that season worth it. And that is something, again, that made me so confident going in, even with all the things that people could say as far as the money risk and the equipment or blah, blah, blah. There's always something somebody can find that they're going to say is like, are you sure you're getting the best? And right there, that time and pause that he took on face value to some people may have been a little frustrating. Like, why wasn't he just signing this and taking you seriously? But I knew from the get-go that was simply Bill trying to put the message forward that he does not want to waste our time. He wants to make sure this is a worth it opportunity, and he did just that. He helped me put together a group around me of people that I trust and can work hard with to get as much success out of myself as I can. And I have seen it so clearly already that we are in a much better environment than we ever were last year. And I think people around us have noticed as well too. But we put together a team of crew chief, car chief, 2 crewmen, and a spotter. And to go through those guys, we brought Chuck back on, of course. And technically, he's not labeled our crew chief. He is our car chief. And the reason being is Chuck has a full-time business to run. And in a perfect world, we'd have Chuck labeled as the crew chief. But the crew chief spends more time being a people manager than a car manager. And Chuck's profession is on the cars. That's where his interest is, and that's where he feels like he can be the best help to us. So we made him car chief so that he doesn't have the obligation to be in the shop like a crew chief and the time that he has to devote to that, plus not having to be the people manager at the track. He can just focus on the car. And we brought in Mario, who was Cole Moore's crew chief in the past, to kind of fill that crew chief role. And, I won't say it publicly. Unfortunately, there's just certain circumstances that popped up where Mario wasn't able to join us at the track at Phoenix. But we still, even in that, Bill gave us John, who, again, is somebody I work closely with in 2023. To have him as our crew chief at Phoenix, when I got that phone call, I literally told him, so you're telling me I'm taking a step from a crew chief that I haven't really got to work with as a driver to a guy that I spent all last year working with as a driver, and you're telling me sorry? I was like, I don't see this as a bad thing, for a driver going into their first race, especially at a place like Phoenix. So we got our spotter, Logan Jewell, who is the guy that I've been working with in late models and working on his cars. And we got our crew members. We have Joe, who worked with us last year, Evan, who's the fabricator in the shop that I worked with closely last year, who, all are great people. And then on top of it all, kind of full circle, when I first started working back at Racing Dynamics, I met a guy named Warren Simpson, who Warren is kind of known well out here in the West Coast for working in different crews and different roles, but he jumped on as our hauler driver and was going to be a part of the team. And I was so glad to hear that. That was so cool. He helped assist with tires, and we just had a group that I felt comfortable with. And I think that is one of the most important things that helped us take a jump over the rest of the rookies going into Phoenix. I did not feel like I was going into a new environment. I literally felt like I had some of like the most familiar faces that I could ask for around me in a car, obviously a car that I got my feet wet last year. And the only new thing was the track. That's it going into Phoenix. So all things considered, I think I had it really well off as a rookie. I think there was probably a lot of stress still, which I'll get to. But God, it could have been a whole lot worse if I was, working with people I had no clue about. And, Bill could have thrown together a deal. And the fact he took the time to put together one like the one I have, I think it's going to give us a great chance to get stuff done the way we want to this season. So let's move into Phoenix. Talking about Phoenix, through the off season, we put our announcement out and we heard so much feedback, some positive, some kind of like neutral, like kind of just curious if people were going to see, how it went. And honestly, the positivity was overwhelming. So many people wanted to see more after last season. And I myself felt like, I wanted to come back, but I didn't know if we'd have the opportunity, and we did, and bless them for giving us that chance through Pacific Office and BMR and everyone else that's supported us along the way. But, we put that announcement out there, and going into Phoenix, it immediately started like feeling serious, like we were just in the heat of it. And I didn't know the best way to prepare, because all the time I went to Phoenix as a crew member, the drivers always had this like look in their eyes or kind of aura that made me think like this place is not like the rest. They'd always got out of the car and kind of looked like almost shaken up. And I was like, what is going on? So I've had conversations, and guys some guys would just say like, man, this place is flat out scary. It's fast. It's on edge. You're so loose, blah, blah, blah. And going in as a driver, I'd never been on an oval that big. I've been sure on road courses where we're going 170 and, but that's just not the same as an oval doing that kind of speed. So I didn't know what to expect. So I just started watching film. I probably watched last year's race probably 7 times in full, and reached out to every driver that I had as a resource. And I hope people, if they listen to this, hear this part, because it was so cool to hear the amount of drivers, to see the amount of drivers that reached out to me that were competitors, that were teammates on both the ARCA level and the Truck Series team, that were just experienced veterans in the sport or in just racing in general in the Northwest, even just friends and family that had advice on how to keep my head level. I mean, the amount of feedback I had before Phoenix was unlike anything I've ever seen. People were giving me advice left and right, whether I asked for it or not. I mean, I couldn't even absorb the amount of information that was coming my way. And I just felt so grateful for that. And I think my camera is going to die soon, so I'm going to try to just keep digging here. But no, there's probably a pause coming up. Anyways, so yeah, going into Phoenix, they had 45 cars entered, and that is so many cars. For anyone that doesn't know the West Series, normally they have like 20 cars at a race, 20 to 25. And yes, it was a combination race. We had both the ARCA Central and the ARCA West Series there. But still, 45 cars to make that race. They only let 40 take the green. So in order to be in the race, you actually had to qualify inside the top 32. Reason being the 32 and not 40 is they give 8 provisional spots. And provisionals go to people that are notable, that were high in the point standings the year prior, blah, 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 which, long story short, we were not a provisional driver. So we knew we had to be in the top 32. And there were guys coming from all over the country, bringing the best of the best. And going in, honestly, it wasn't until like a couple weeks before we found out that we weren't having an Ilmor motor. That is the big engine basically compared to the other option, which is the spec engine, which is a little less power, and not computerized like the Ilmor is, where you have a little bit more tuning capabilities and things of that sort. It's the motor that the Truck Series run. We were going to run the spec engine, and I found out that a couple weeks prior, which even built that tension more, because watching the BMR guys race at Phoenix in the past, they were really competitive everywhere, but when they went to Phoenix, it was hard for those drivers to even get in the top 10, just because I think of the motors they were running against those guys. And ARCA did certain things this offseason to help bridge that gap some, but there was still a notable gap. And so we went into it kind of just with the goal of making the top 32. And the amount of stress, I've never seen my family stress the way they were stressed before this race, because they knew how bad I wanted this opportunity and how bad I wanted to do well. But there was so much, like, as far as my driving capabilities go, that was like up in question because I'd never been there before. Camera just died on us. So, we'll wrap up this part, and then I'll jump into the next portion once I get the camera charged. But apologies for the video, people. I just want to finish this where I'm at. There was a lot of question out there as far as my capabilities and what I could do when we went to Phoenix. So, I saw so much stress in people's eyes, and my parents were worried sick. And so, I'll stop it here. Our goal was we had to qualify in the top 32. So we went into Phoenix knowing that. But I'm going to go ahead and charge up this camera, and then we'll come back here in a minute. Well, let's see here. Take these headphones off. Get my stuff hooked up. But once again, I am popping back in. Sorry, a little unprepared there. I'm jumping back in after cutting out once again. I apologize for any technical issues we've been having. Again, just trying to figure out the best way to make this all work as I start doing these podcasts more regularly. But where I was talking about the our Phoenix race. So let's get back into that. So obviously, talking about Phoenix, a rookie going into Phoenix for the first time, I think there's just a lot to be thinking about. Obviously, I can do as much as I want to prepare, but I have no clue what to expect being my first time on a big oval like that, like I mentioned. And before the camera cut out, before I mentioned that I had so many people reaching out trying to give me advice, and it was such a humbling experience to see all that. But it was just, I never felt like anything was going to quite prepare me better than just getting out there and doing it. And that's always how I've been in a race car. But, we got down there and my parents were just a wreck. We had to qualify inside the top 32 because they were only giving 8 provisionals, which we were not going to be getting. And 40 people started the show, and there was 45 cars there trying to make the race. So we had to qualify inside the top 32 since they're giving 8 provisionals. And that was my only goal. We went out there in practice, and I literally just took the mindset of like, okay, I'm going to work into this thing. We kind of had a strategy that me and my spotter and car chief Chuck had put together before we go into the track, that we practiced on iRacing the best we could beforehand, and just kind of had an idea of how we wanted to treat practice, and we just tried to stick to the plan. That's all I did. I said, I'm not going to worry about anything. I'm going to try to stick to the plan, because my dad was saying, no matter what anyone tells you, just don't back the thing in the fence. Don't wreck the car. Just qualify inside the top 32. That's all you got to do. Just go out there and put a simple lap together. Doesn't need to be a flyer. I'm like, Dad, no matter what you tell me, I'm a race car driver, and I'm going to put down the same lap in qualifying as I was before you said anything, and that's just what it is. And whatever our speed is, that's how fast we're going to be. So I think he got the point pretty quick that, I knew he was stressed, but there was nothing we could say or do that was going to really affect the way I tried to handle the situation. I just tried to be really methodical and coordinated and plan out how we wanted everything to do, to the way we were going to practice, to qualify. Everybody there knew exactly what every lap that we wanted to run was going to look like, and we stuck to it. And I was really proud of that, and I think that really showed, because we came out of practice, fired off a little slow, did our shakedown, and we just wanted to do what we planned, which was just get a few laps in the car, give me an idea of what the track looked like from the driver's seat, come back in and check things out. And we did. And when we went back out and I kind of got the first green light from the team to go for it, I just kept working into it, expecting to find an edge that, honestly, I'm shocked was never really there, because of the way these cars go through the air, in clean air. At a track like Phoenix, where you are going faster than I ever have on a small short track, you have so much more downforce on the front of these cars that make them feel glued to the track. So even though they got skewing them and got them pretty free to get through these flat corners the best they can, even when I felt that kick in, it was shocking to me how different it felt from your normal average short track loose. You're going through the corner, and if you can imagine, you turn off the wall, and you're feeding the wheel into it in these big long corners. You kind of got to sweep into the corner as wide as you can, and you just feel like you're adding wheel forever. And as I get to the center and I feel this thing hesitate and point back down the track, I stab the throttle just a little bit to pick up that pace and keep the momentum going. And all of a sudden, you just feel the rear kind of sit back, and you feel that right rear kick out and that skew kick in, and that thing plants. And even though it goes loose, it never feels like short track loose, where it's just you're on top of the track skating. You have all that downforce on the front of the car shoving it into the track. So even when it gets loose and you feel that kickback, all I did was hold my hands there and feed the throttle into it progressively, kind of that initial 15% touch, and then rapidly pick it up as I got to the bottom of the pedal. And it would just take every bit of it. I was so shocked, and I knew we were running the spec engine, but still, I get out of the car and I'm like, all right, where are we at? They're telling me times, and honestly, times as a driver can only mean so much. Other than consistency, they don't really tell me much unless they're telling me what other guys are running, because you're just telling me a time. I don't know if that's good or bad, and it's hard to tell by guys' voices because they try to stay on pretty monotone on the radio. So I got out and I looked at the board for the first time and saw we were 13th or 14th or whatever it was, and by the end of practice we moved to 14th or 15th in practice. We were 15th fastest out of the 45 that tried to attempt to make laps, and I was pretty shocked. I mean, I had not even used the dog leg yet. I felt like we were just saving our stuff. I told the team, we try to make some adjustments, and they were trying to figure out really what I felt. I went out there and I told them, man, this is the best feeling car I've ever drove. I mean, it really feels solid. And I said, we went out there and the first run, before I got out of the car, the first run, I felt just a little snug down in 3 as I entered in, got to the bottom of the track. I felt like we were picking up a right front chatter that we needed to get out of it, and I made that pretty clear to the team as fast as I could. And we made a small camber adjustment. That's all it took to get that back out of it. And all of a sudden, the thing was planted and working that right front the way it needed to as we came through there. But other than that, I told them it felt great. And they're like, man, you sure you don't feel like too loose? Because that's something we hear all the time. And I said, no, I love it, man. As soon as I pick up that throttle, I just bring the wheel back straight and just hold it there. And it just takes it. I don't have to fight it at all. I felt super smooth. And they're like, well, you're running where you need to be, but come in, we're going to try something. And I said, all right, what are you going to try? And he said, we just want to try something. So my crew chief, John, calls me in. We swing into the pits. He makes a big swing at it. I see him holding like a spring and walking back to the right rear. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I literally said, I love it. What are we doing here? And he said, all right, just go out. I just want you to try something. And he sent me out. Dude, I went off into 1 that first lap. That thing was a dump truck. I mean, just went straight up the track. They had me run a couple laps, and I felt like I was like a joke out there. Maybe it didn't look as bad as I thought, but just going to the corner and just chatter up on the right front, chattering up the track, plowing tight. I come on the radio. I'm like, dude, this thing is junk. Go back. Sorry if I'm yelling into the radio or into the microphone, but I was like, man, this thing is just junk. Go back to whatever the heck you did. I want it to the way it was before. That felt the best. And he's like, all right, perfect. You weren't lying. And I was like, what? And he's like, I just wanted to make sure you weren't too free and afraid to drive it in any harder. He said, it's something that we kind of have here, and some people think they're good, but usually we tighten them up and they go even faster. And honestly, it just made me feel like junk. I think we did actually click off a little bit faster of a lap, like a tenth or two faster, because of how hard I was able to drive it in with how tight the car was. But it just was going to kill the right front if we ran it that way. So I told him, no, go back. I think there's more there if I'm neutral and can really push the car. Because I told him I wasn't even going all the hard yet. Like I said, I'd never even touched the dog leg in practice and still be on 15th on the board. There's a lot of time down there for anyone that's not aware of what Phoenix looks like. It's almost like a triangle. In the top part of the triangle, you can shortcut going through what's called the dog leg, which is like an apron that cuts below that top point. And that's probably the quickest way of explaining it. It's abrupt. It's a very hard transition, and the reason I wouldn't go down there and practice, if you can see the video, I'll try to describe the best I can with my words well, but you have the banking there. I think it's like a 12-degree banking, 14-degree on the front straightaway. I can't remember exactly what it is. And then the apron is flat. And so if you can picture driving on like a side hill and then slamming across to where it's flat, that transition with a car that's on the ground, literally riding like a 16th of an inch off the ground, sealed off on the front, it's very abrupt to the car as you drive down across that apron. And nothing prepares you for it. I promise you, people were telling me it is one of the craziest feelings in the car. Well, we went out there in qualifying. Again, my only plan and only goal was to qualify top 32. And they told us we had about 15 minutes with all 45 drivers to try to make an attempt, right? And so I'm thinking, okay, like everyone's talking about, well, how late can we go out? Like, can we wait till a gap? And everyone's, they're asking in the drivers meeting, and ARCA's telling them, yeah, but if there's a caution that comes out and we got to end the session, there's a cup practice right after this, so you don't get it go. And I knew not having a provisional, I'm like, okay, that's not an option. I can't risk that. So on the contrary, I just said, screw you guys, let's go first. I don't care what people say. Like, let's just be the first out there. We're just trying to make the race, You had all these Venturini cars and stuff trying to wait till the very end to get clean track. I was like, nah, let's get out there. I know they're talking about drafting and clean air and blah. I just said, let's just go, get it done with, and get off the track so that we know we get a lap in. Once you go out there and come off the track, you can't go back out. That's the way qualifying works in ARCA. So that's what we did. And I went out. There was one car that I caught coming through the dog leg, and I'll get there in a second. But my plan was go out, make my outlap above the dog leg, come around and take the green. And when I took that green, slam it across the dog leg for the first time and run that lap as hard as I possibly could, because that was the one lap I was giving myself, because that thing was going to be taped off solid and overheat and ready to explode by the time I finished that lap. And it was exactly that. I came to take that green flag, and I could see as I was coming to my green flag lap, I remember seeing the slow car about 15 to 20 car lengths ahead as I was cutting down the back straightaway, and I'm thinking, damn, I think I'm going to catch him. And I was thinking, like, maybe I can just try to get there at a good time or give myself enough space where I just catch him coming to the line and maybe even get a tow, like with the draft. But we were just too fast compared to who it was. And so we came through 3 and 4. I'm catching him 5 car lengths back. We come out to the wall, and I just made the left as early as I can. And the abrupt violence that apron has as you turn across there is something, it's so hard to describe without you going through it. But the best way I could think of describing it to everyone that asked was, if you've ever been on one of those old rickety roller coasters that have the strap that comes over your shoulder and has the headrests on both sides of your, like the strap over that goes over your shoulders right on both sides of your head. When you go on any like those hard corners or loopy-loops and your head smacks back and forth between it and is like super jolting to your head, that's exactly what it felt like to go down across that apron, because our full containment seats sit on both sides of your head. And I went down there and made the left and just fell. Bang, 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 bang. And I kid you not, I was just giddy inside that car, my qualifying lap, just laughing as I went through there for the first time, thinking like that was everything everyone told me it was going to be. And I come back across the track, I see the lap car on my outside, my spotter saying, outside, outside. And I just said, screw it, man, I got to make this race. And I went all the way to the wall. He luckily got out of it because of the way we caught him. And I went into one as hard as I could, slid up the track, probably a groove at center. As soon as I felt that thing hesitate to come back down the track, just stabbed the throttle, brought the wheel back straight, and just held my foot to the floor, and it took it, thank God. Went down to 3. I probably could have got a little bit more, I think, at the exit of 3, coming to this line out of 4, but still, cross the stripes, boom, spotter says it, top of the board. And I'm like, okay, cool to hear, but I think there's only like 3 people out here right now. So puttered around, made my way to pit road, and as I came off the track, I'm looking up at the pillar, and I'm like trying to see it from inside the cars because there's a big scoring pylon in the center of Phoenix, and I could see we're still up there. I'm like, holy crap. So I putt around, they have us park on pit road, I get out, take my time, and I climb out, and the first thing I see is the 16 car P1, 19 car, aka little Eric Johnson Jr., P2 out of like 20 people. And I'm like, holy crap, what just happened? Like, thinking to myself, there's no way. There's no way this stands. And I knew, like, we picked up, I think, like over half a second just going down there through the dogleg from our best practice lap. And I was thinking to myself, like, there's no way we stand up here. And I was right. I mean, we slowly fell down as the faster cars went out. But I say faster cars. There was 45 people there. We ended up P14 on the board. Somebody went out last minute, and there was a weird scoring thing. Ended up settling officially 15th. But when we got out of the car on the scoring pylon, end of qualifying, P14 out of 45, so it said. Ended up 15th technically. That's where they started us in the race because of the way somebody moved up in. But still, 15th out of 45 cars. I was just ecstatic. I mean, that right there, I can't tell you the sigh of relief. Man, my camera just died again. I know I'm trying to squeeze out this recording because if I'm going to be honest to anyone watching this, I got work to do at our shop, but I wanted to get this out for you guys. We're about 3/4 of the way through this. So, I'm just gonna end this here for a minute, let it charge back up. We'll shoot out the last 15 minutes, but, give me 1 second. Final time. We're going to try to wrap this episode up. I'm back, kind of capping off our qualifying efforts there. Yeah, I can't tell you guys how surreal it felt to see our team, the number 16 Napa car up on P1 and my number 19 Pacific Office Automation Chevrolet sitting P2. You know, it's like storybook. And of course, like I said, we moved down, ended up inside the top 15 for qualifying, and yeah, what more can you really say? I mean, I just going in with the small motor. Our teammate had the Ilmore. The 16 car had the Ilmore, and I was in the spec, and I thought there was going to be a really big gap. You know, respectfully, he did have some good time on us, but I think he qualified 7th. I was 14th, 15th, and you know, I was just, I felt really, really proud of our team. That was like a testament to me to like basically, that proved to me that like, sorry, I don't mean to use the word testament to me. That was like proof to me that our team had, had what it take, had what it took to be there and meant in, being a rookie, all things considered, I just don't think you could really ask for more. That was so cool. Yes, of course, there were people like Isabella Robusto, I think was in like the top 6 or in a Venerini car, but there's also rookies that were in the back. And so I was really pleased first time ever at Phoenix, coming from my iRacing sim rig you see behind me in my room to Phoenix in real life out of 45 cars, that's just a big accomplishment in my book. And we went out there into the race. I just, the whole day I was just having so much fun and saying that on the radio over and over again. But we went out there in the race, starting right next to an Andretti, which, by the way, I got out on after qualifying, and he pulls in next to me. He went out early too. I had to go over, and he probably couldn't even hear what I said, but I shook his hand and I said, man, I'm a huge fan. I'm a diehard race fan before even a racer, and I just had to come over here and say hi, or I would have just kicked myself, So, just wanted to say hello. And he shook my hand. He said hi, but he wasn't really having it. I don't think he was having a great day. So, hopefully I caught him on an off day, but and it wasn't just, he didn't want to meet me or whatever the heck. He doesn't know who I am, but still, racing in Andretti was pretty cool to say the least. And we go out there and take the green flag, and man, that race was just so much fun, start to end. Unfortunately, got cut short, and we were running inside the top 15 the whole race. Eventually, our teammate was one spot in front of us. I think I was like 14th, he was 13th, and we were running there solid until right before the halfway break. Unfortunately, had an incident where lap car, I was going underneath him. He was 5-6 plus laps down, and I went to go under him, and boom. I don't know exactly the amount of laps he was down, but, I was expecting him to stay out of the way, and he moved up in a fashion that I thought he was gonna. Kind of coming into 1 and 2, he's about 10 car lengths up, and he washed up to like the 3rd groove. So I was thinking, okay, he's gonna stay high here. I come out of 2, and he comes down across the track, and I'm like, okay, maybe he's going low. So then he stays low, and I catch about 5 car lengths back, 4 car lengths back down the back straightaway as we come onto the back stretch, and he goes up to the wall. And I'm like, okay, at this point, I got to get by him. I have Jake Bowman coming just a couple car lengths back, and I got the pressure from him for the last few laps, so I got to take this. I go to the inside as soon as we get on the front straightaway, and I just rode there down the whole straightaway, thinking I've shown myself, like, hey, guy, I'm coming here. Spotter, let him know. And I get up to his rear tire, basically, and we turn in, and honestly, before we even turned in, he starts coming down. I'm like, oh, God, here we go. I tried to go down, and I saw it happen. I just knew it was too late. There's nothing I could do. Comes down like I was going to give him the spot, and I'm thinking he's a lapper staying out of the way. Pop him, turns him sideways, and unfortunately ended his night and Jake's as well, and as they kind of got collected. And honestly, our car was kind of unscathed. It just had a little scratch in the wrap, and I was able to gather it up and keep going. And the worst part of it all for us was we just lost like 10 spots because of it. So it sent me back to like 24th or something. And it trapped me a lap down because of the way the scoring worked out. So then I was a lap down, like 24th, and we had a issue with either a valve cover or a breather on a valve cover, spitting oil, either blow by or just a poor gasket or something. And we had a notable oil leak kick off after that second half, and we went, and it just kind of got worse and worse on us. We started losing drive. So we really didn't have much for anyone on restarts, but we're able to work our way back up to 20th. And that's where we ended it. We're literally coming to the line. Marco was in front of me again, and I battled him all race long, which is just such a cool thing to say out loud. Battling Marco Andretti for an entire race. And I actually had to move him in the beginning of the race, and I came up, I was following Marco as we took the green and trying to learn what I could from him, but I quickly realized we just kind of had something that he didn't, and I know he was struggling through the day with his car, so I tried to go high, and he kind of aero blocked me up coming up the track and made me tight. I tried to go low, and he did the same thing, kind of cut me and pinched me there, closed the door a couple times, and I'm like, man, I gotta go. I'm getting ran over from behind. So finally, one time, I could just make up like a car length to him, rolling off the brake into three, and finally, just one time, I let it go and just popped him once at center, and he got a little light, shook up a groove, and it was the perfect bump and run. I mean, literally, I can say one of the first ever bump and run passes I've ever pulled was on Marco Andretti at Phoenix, which is like the coolest thing to me. He probably didn't appreciate it very much, but I had to go, you know what I mean? So I'm sure somebody like him gets that more than anyone else, and he was just doing his best to hold his own and hold us up, but eventually one's got to give, and so he was fine. He kept digging, but we got past him, and going down the back straightaway, I just came on the radio, and I just remember saying, I just passed a freaking Andretti, and the team's like, hey, get back to focus, get back to focusing here, but I couldn't help but say something. I mean, I was like, did you guys see that? So, yeah, proud moment, and then at the end of the race, coming to the white, quote-unquote white, because they ended the race early, I got underneath him, and at the start-finish, turned down across the dog leg and passed him coming out of the dog leg. Going through 1 and 2, was in front of him clearly, and caution came out. And you'll actually, if you go back and see it on the broadcast, he passed me back under the yellow, which Marco, something they very clearly said in the driver's meeting was, don't do that. Well, he's smart enough to know that they probably weren't going to catch him if he did it, but what he didn't know was they were showing his camera live on the broadcast when he did it, and he passed me back under yellow. They awarded him 20th at the end of the race, but the next morning they went back and announced and corrected the results and gave me 20th and him 21st. So I was like, yeah, top 20 at Phoenix out of 40 cars, small win. We should have, realistically, I think we had a car that could have been a top 15, close to a top 10 car. I think we had I would say a 11th, 10th place car. But yeah, beating Andretti, struggling in the oil leak, made a bump and run, had a little run in. That's NASCAR. Boom. First ever race made me really feel like a NASCAR driver going around an oval like that. But that was an experience I will just remember forever. I had so much fun, and the team, you could just feel the energy. It was there. Yes, we could have done better. Yes, we learned a lot, but at the end of the day, it was so much fun. I wouldn't trade it for the world, and now going into Irwindale, we were lucky enough to go test there in Kern, and I feel pretty good about it. I'll go into that on my next episode as we're just kind of wrapping this one up, but yeah, guys, I just, this year just feels different. It feels like it's going to be a good year as long as we keep that mindset and I just keep having fun. So hopefully you guys enjoy it the way I am, but I'm just really trying to keep that goal and mindset of enjoying myself when I'm out there, and that's exactly what I did there. But yeah, other than that, I'm going to wrap it up. Camera's been fighting me this whole time, so I think it's my sign to get us out of here and let you guys go. If you enjoyed it, let me know in the comments if you're on YouTube, or give us a good follow on Spotify. Reach out. Let me know what you guys want to hear about. But just kind of coming to the end of these recap episodes, and then we'll get into the future stuff and maybe some guests or something. So I appreciate it. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to hit that notification button so you can hear or be notified when we are putting out more content like this. But that's all I got. Thanks for joining me in the driver's lounge, and until next time, take it easy.